But from there, the idea is if you have the right people around you, the idea will evolve. And if you're open for it, it'll probably become an even better and more doable and implementable idea.
Right. So we got Sophia and Juan here, which was our two main people that we needed. So I'd like to go ahead and get started. And anyone else come in, we'll just keep it moving. So hey everybody, we got Glenn here with us today, and what he's going to talk to us about is a little bit about you guys' new position. So Glenn, Juan is going to be our resource development coordinator, working with us in the area of fundraising and grants. And Sophia is going to be working as a community outreach coordinator, working with us in terms of sponsorship and building relationships with potential organizations like coalitions, sponsors, corporations, things of that nature.
Okay, cool. Do either of you have any experience with either of these roles?
Me personally, no experience at all. So this is all like fresh to me and new.
Okay. And Juan, same thing?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, cool. Do you guys have any questions off the top, or should I just riff?
Yeah, you can just go ahead and get started, and then I'll ask you questions afterwards.
Sure. Okay. We don't have a lot of time together, so I'll just riff for a little while, but feel free to jump in and ask questions, and I'll try to create space for questions. And what I'm going to speak to is probably going to speak to both of you, and then I'll try to get more specific. So I've said this to other people on Ivan's team before, like fundraising and resource raising, whether you're pulling people towards the organization, whether you're pulling what's called in-kind donations, whether it's like food or equipment or property or cars or whatever, or whether you're pulling money, grants toward the organization, the first thing you need to think about is consistency in brand, consistency in messaging. Like, how do we all make sure we're saying the same thing in the same way so that as people think about the organization, they can wrap their head around it, they can talk to other people around it, they know what it is they're contributing to. I always tell people to think about like a department store, like Macy's, for instance. If you go to Macy's and they're selling clothing and refrigerators and motorcycles, you're sort of confused. Why am I here? What am I buying? Same thing with people who want to contribute to something. Even though philanthropy, you wouldn't expect people to have the same philosophy and the same thinking as people who are walking to a retail space. People really do sort of ask myself, what am I buying, or what am I buying into, or what am I contributing to? And you need to be really clear about what that answer is. And often what you don't want to do is to try to share the totality of who we are. The same way, if you're in Macy's and you can't find what you need, it becomes overwhelming and you walk out. Like, even though we're doing a lot of things, you want to think about what's the big labels you can use to help define for other people what it is that we're doing. So if you go in Macy's and you see men's clothing, maybe you break it down, men's suits and men's casual, but then you don't go too much further than that because it just becomes too confusing. That's enough to sort of give people a way in. Similarly, you want to think about what are the top line things that you can talk about with respect to this organization to inspire people to want to give. Most people who give are giving because they're expecting some sort of tax donation. They're expecting that by making a donation to a tax exempt organization that they'll have something to write off on their taxes, even businesses. But some people do give primarily because their values line up with the organization's values. And so I'd say if you're writing to them or if you're talking to them, you always want to start with value statements because you never know where people are on the core of the issue. So for an organization like this, for instance, starting out saying, we believe that all Americans should have the chance to be prosperous, to be able to own property, to feel like they have a stake in their own community, to have access to quality programs, quality education, whatever they need to be able to prosper. That's a value statement. I've said nothing about what we do, but I've used the value statement to try to pull people further into the conversation to get them to lean in. Sometimes I'll ask people, like, hey, Sophia, tell me a little bit about, what you care about. Like, what have you done philanthropically in the past? Or is there anything about this particular organization that inspires you? Particularly because you want to get people in a space of being a bit emotional. When you're trying to get people to donate, you want them to feel like there's a relationship and that there's an emotional connection to the organization. So starting out with a value statement and also giving some space for the prospective donor to talk about why they care. Why do you care about this issue? Why do you care about this organization? What is it that draws you to the concept of justice? Those kinds of things are actually very closely tied to being a successful fundraiser, because when people spend money or when they donate money, they tend to do it because they're emotionally moved. Very similar to going in a department store and buying new clothes, the feeling you get from buying something new. That same feeling plays out in the philanthropic space. So the next thing I would do after going through a conversation that starts out with values is to talk about the problem. Like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Like, we're supporting communities that have been disproportionately marginalized, disenfranchised, have little access to resources, have been redlined, are not primary owners of the residence they live in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you define the problem, and then you define the solution. Here's what we bring to the table. Here's what we are doing now, and here's what we plan to do in the future. And then you go to action, which is what you want the person to do. So we'd love for your organization to donate, 10 drills to, from Home Depot to us, because these drills are going to be used by formerly incarcerated people to help rebuild 10 homes in their community that they will then blah, 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 blah. So it's values, problem, solution, action, with some space in between for the prospective donor to get emotionally involved in what it is you're doing by telling you why they'd be interested in this kind of work, but closing with a very clear action step and a concrete ask. You have to do a concrete ask. And when you do the concrete ask, like I just did, hey, Home Depot Foundation, even though you guys can't give us a financial donation, I'm so happy you're willing to give us an in-kind donation. We're hoping you'll donate 10 drills and 10 table saws and 10 levelers. You can see I don't do this kind of work because I'm just making this shit up as I go along. That'll help us do this, this, and this. And then you just stop and you wait for the person to answer. You don't say anything else. Once you do the ask, you just stop and wait. Or obviously all this can happen in an email, but succinctness is important. Like, if you're writing it in an email, try to be very succinct at first. Try to do everything I said in 2 paragraphs. And if people want more, they'll ask you for more. Anyway, let me stop there. That was a lot already.
So do you guys have any questions? Sophia, Juan?
Okay, that was really great. One question I have was, when we're asking like how much they would donate, would you say like we give them like a rough concrete number, or would that be like too pushy?
Yeah, no, there's a few ways to do. First of all, there's no such thing as too pushy most of the time in development. The reason faith-based institutions raise more money than any other nonprofit, any other tax-exempt organization, is that they ask more than anyone else. So it's okay to ask. Like, that's what fundraising is all about, being a little bit pushy, recognizing that people that have resources are very used to people asking them for money. And so don't make decisions for them. So that's just to answer the second part of your question. Going back to the first part about how much you ask for, if you have a sense of how wealthy the person is, then you ask for what you think makes sense. So if the person's a millionaire, then like asking them for 25,000 is not a bad thing. Asking them for 50,000 may not even be a bad thing. But if you have a sense of what their income is like, if they make 200,000 a year, then you probably think maybe they can give away 5 or 10,000 more for some people if they're more charitable. So you want to get a sense of what their value looks like by Googling them. There's some databases out there to find out these things. There's probably some free databases to find out how much people give politically, which will give you a sense of how much they give away. There's Wikipedia to find out sometimes how wealthy a person is, and some other websites. So we don't have access to the kind of databases that would tell us exactly how much people have given, but try to use your gut based on what you can find on the internet about their worth. And that'll give you a sense of what to ask them for. If it's a foundation, then you just want to check and see what they've given away in the past. But it's better to just ask for what you need. Like you can say something like, we need those 30 tools. I recognize that maybe you guys give less than that. Maybe there's even a chance that you're willing to give more than that. But I really wanted to start out with what we really need and hoping that that matches what you can do to support us.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Yeah, you were saying that like when you're kind of no matter how you're trying to deliver the message, you're saying like try to like go like kind of like instead of like saying what the organization is right away, kind of like go. You're saying go with the value. Like maybe you can try to get like really try to like I don't know how to say it, like like try to like think about it more of like take away the organization, like think of like this is what try to go with the person's value more or less.
Yeah, the reason is if I started out saying I'm here because I work for an organization that helps people who've been in prison to buy homes, refurbish them, and end up owning equity in those properties. As soon as I hear people who've been in prison, you might have lost me. But if you start out saying, America is a place where we value land ownership, and every person who lives here should have the ability to purchase land, own land, feel like they have some stake in America, feel like they have some ownership over this country. Like that is different, right? That'll get the person, most people shaking their head, yes. Even if they don't agree with you about the prison thing yet, you at least have them leaning into the conversation because you're agreeing on a set of values before you go into the specifics of who we are.
Okay.
Think about it. That can be a conversation opener. So if I'm talking to a very conservative person that has never thought about helping people in prison, and I start out saying, one of the avenues to strong community and strong family is access to resources, people's ability to take care of themselves, pay child support, pay their mortgage. And now suddenly you have a conservative person saying, hell yeah, yes, this is a country where people lift themselves up by their bootstraps, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, well, we believe that's true even for people who serve time, So now you still have the person's attention, as opposed to like, I believe people who've been in prison should be able to own their own home. Well, maybe not. Maybe you just lost me. Maybe you lost me right from the gate because as soon as I heard the word prison, all the negative stuff that comes with it got in the way of me hearing the rest of the message versus the values opening, which starts with, come on, you and I are the same. We believe in the same things. We have the same values.
Okay, that makes sense. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
So, yeah, a quick question, Glenn. In terms of like either considering joining a coalition or developing community partners, because that's part of what Sophia's job is going to entail. Is there any just general advice that you would like to give?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, partnerships work when each partner brings something unique to the table and feels like they get something out of the relationship. So you really have to have a sense of what is the value add for the prospective partner. So if it's a nonprofit, I would start out saying, can you tell me a little bit about your work? What are you guys funded to do? What do your programs look for? How do you measure success? Because while they're talking, you're starting to think of, okay, what is it that we do that they can take some credit for if they partnered with us? I mean, I'm going to sound terribly sort of crass in this conversation, but I just believe that human beings are always, even whether they know it or not always, but primarily sort of looking for what's in it for them or what's in it for their organization. And so as you're trying to build partnerships, you need to come to that conclusion even before they do sometimes. So if you want to work with an organization, say, that rehabs houses for older people, but they don't have labor to be able to do it. So imagine a partnership where we bring the labor to the table and we pay for the labor and they bring the skills and the professionals and the materials to the table. So they get to count that as a win because in the end, we'll promise to sell those properties to people over 50 or whatever their magic number is. They get to bring the parts to the table. They get to bring the professionals to the table. We bring the labor to the table and some of the resources. And that becomes a win-win. That's a win-win. They get to count all of that as success, and we do too. So you're always looking for, like, if you think of a Venn diagram, if you got one circle here and one circle here, as I pick up two squares, the space where they overlap, that sweet spot here, is what you're looking for. You're looking for, in a Venn diagram, what's that sweet spot where both organizations or both individuals or an individual and organization see a space where they both have mutual interests. That's what you're looking for as you build these relationships. With nonprofits, it's usually about what kind of grants they have that they can sort of write off their work with you as a deliverable on one of their grants. If it's government, it's usually, can they contribute something, really money, without you applying for some competitive grant? But there's other things that government can contribute, and they're usually looking for recognition, right? They usually have a mayor or a governor or a council member that needs some media that they can't get without a nonprofit getting that media. So helping them understand how you can help amplify their good work. And then individuals, it runs the gamut. As we all know, different personalities need different things. Some people can want media themselves as an individual. Some people can just want to feel good. Some people want proximity. I mean, I had a guy once who co-founded Bloomberg LLP with Mike Bloomberg, and I met with him to raise money, and I was trying to get him to fund some advocacy work. And he said, look, when I donate money to a nonprofit, I just want to see a Black kid get a job. And as crass as that was, it was really clear that that's what he's looking for. When he gives philanthropically, he wants to feel good that a less privileged human being, person of color, actually got a job, and that's what he needed. So it's good to figure out what your prospective partner needs to feel like it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Yeah, 11 minutes, folks. Lightning round. Keep going. Other questions?
Yeah, so Sophia, Juan, y'all don't have any other questions? So what does this look like so Sophia has basically created a list. So just kind of let me walk some things through real quick. She's created a list of potential organizations. Her job is basically going to be to go in there, identify what these organizations' needs are first and foremost, and see whether or not we can provide those needs.
Give me an example. Do you have any example? Any organization, company, whatever?
Yeah, so say we want to work with youth people or Habitat for Humanity. What can we offer an organization that big? Because they pretty much got it all, but I think, we would have to do some homework to see what they don't have.
Yeah. I would ask someone there for an informational interview. I wouldn't even let on that I'm looking for a partnership right away. I would say I'd love to do an informational interview to learn a lot about what you do and tell you a little bit about what we do. People love to talk about themselves, and it gets you through the door, gets you a chance to start a relationship. I would listen really closely to hear about what they do. And then I would ask them, what's the most challenging part of what you do? And then I'd be listening really closely to what those challenges are and seeing whether there are places where we can fill a gap, and then telling them about what we do and a bit about our challenges. And then, hopefully both people are listening for that sweet spot in the Venn diagram that I talked about. There'll be times where, they might say things like, oh, every project we have is fully funded. We have more money than we need. We can always find labor. People are always donating materials to us. Like, yeah, we really have no challenges. We're in the best place we've ever been. Well, you know what? That may mean that that's not a good partnership. You don't want a partner to feel like they're being charitable. You want them to feel like it's a win-win.
Got it. Now, Sophia, do you have any questions you want to ask in that regard?
Trying to think of one.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. I guess another question is putting together a standard checklist for when we're working for organizations. What would you suggest we do, say, to create like a standard checklist as, say, Sophia is evaluating and getting ready to contact or approach these organizations, and say during the course of the conversation, being able to check off on certain things?
I'd want to know who I'm talking to, what their title is in the organization, a little bit about their professional history, enough about the organization that you can at least show you've read their website. And then similarly, the ability to describe our organization very succinctly enough so that people can wrap their head around it. What the ask is going to be at the end of the conversation. Those are some of the things that come to mind for me that I wouldn't want to get on any call without having next to me on a piece of paper.
Okay. My next question is in regards to one being our resource development. We're getting ready to map out a strategy in terms of identifying what our budget is for our organization, and then strategically going about not only just grants, but fundraising in other capacities to meet that budget. Is there any advice you can give us in regards to building out a fundraising strategy, identifying our budget, and pursuing potential funding organizations? What does that look like in the real world?
What was the last part of your sentence? And pursuing what from other organizations?
Pursuing that budget through our fundraising means, and what does that look like in the real world?
I think I understand the question. I'm not sure. So if I don't answer it properly, take another swing at it. If I put together a budget for $1 million this year, and I look at my budget and I see that there are places where we don't necessarily have to raise cash, like we can find in-kind contributions to fill gaps. Am I going in the right direction?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Right. That's what I'm always trying to do. I mean, you want to try to raise money in the traditional way. That is your primary focus, because there's all these foundations out there that have a responsibility for distributing resources. Having said that, if I can raise $100,000 in tools instead of spending $100,000 in tools because Home Depot and Best Buy are going to contribute them, then I consider that to be an in-kind contribution, and that saves me the need to raise $100,000. I'm gonna have to wrap
Okay.
up, guys. I have
All right.
someone walked in. I got to get some work done. I'd rather you keep this recording internal, okay?
Yeah, no doubt. So thanks a lot, Glenn. D, could you guys hang on for a second? Because I want to have a conversation with you all too before we get off. And I'll catch up with you later, Glenn.
All right, be good, folks.
Good
Bye-bye.
seeing you, Glenn.
All right, welcome. Bye-bye.
So D, how you doing today?
Good, thanks. And sorry I was running a little late.
No problem.
Stuck
You
in
know,
traffic.
Glenn is one of our advisors, but after looking at your resume, I realize you have a wealth of experience that I think you will be of great assistance here, especially with Sophia being an community outreach coordinator. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but you have an extensive background in sales.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I think these kind of positions kind of overlap because she's selling the organization and she's trying to acquire a product. And I don't know where you could possibly fit in, but I would like to ask, did you consider possibly being a mentor for her? And if you don't mind, explain a little bit about your background and, you know, some of the stuff you've done so she can understand the true value of what you bring to the table.
Well, I will say first, you know, like I've always said, this is, what we're doing here isn't my background. So I still have a learning curve. So I don't know if I consider myself of advisor status, but of course, you know, my motto, I will do what I can. So yes, absolutely. Now, as far as my background in sales, for 25 years, I actually worked for a $500 billion corporation. I was the I first worked, I didn't have this on my resume, I just kind of combined the two. For about, oh, I guess maybe about 10 of those years, I worked as the customer service manager. And then I migrated over to the sales department and worked about 15 years in the sales department and worked my way up to the sales support manager. I was actually the global sales support manager, where I managed our global accounts in Europe, Canada, Asia, Middle East, Mexico, other South America countries, and in which I actually did travel throughout. So I've traveled through the world, in pretty much throughout the world. And my goal was primarily training our sales reps globally how to sell our product. And so I will support them in that effort. And I did also product training, but primarily teaching them how to go into, I see you smiling, teaching them how to go into a client and how to sell the Emerson name and product and what we bring to the table and what we do, and how we can make their lives so much better. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sophia, what you think? She gonna be able to help you out a lot, huh?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
looking forward to it. And like, it sounds like you have a lot of history. And I already know I'm going to learn a lot from you.
Oh, well, I'm always here to do what I can, and I believe in learning from one another. So yes, Sophia, I'm at your disposal, and I'm, yes, happy to work with you.
So I'll make sure that y'all have each other's contact information. Just be mindful that y'all are in the same Instagram chat group.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so all our
Okay.
organizational Facebook chats and Instagram chats are
Okay.
everybody's in there that's with the organization.
Okay.
And
Ivan, I think I want to take that resume back. You're learning too much.
oh no, you lucky I ain't shared it with the team.
No, please, no.
Yeah, I got to looking at their resumes. And the interesting thing, before you came on, I was reading a quote from an article I read today in Entrepreneur magazine.
Mhm.
And the article was about an entrepreneur who has started up, she quit working at Google, did her own startup company in book publishing and distribution. And she was trying to get angel investors to invest in her business idea. And after numerous attempts, nothing was worked. So one day, one of her advisors gave her some advice. And what he said was, at the initial stage of your idea, the idea is less important than the quality of her team.
Mm.
And that they
Mhm.
should have just focused on an idea that they could get in the water first.
Right.
Because once they launch the ship, the
Mhm.
market will guide you through the water.
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. And so true. I agree with it. And I just want to add one thing when it comes to whether it's sales or as these that Sophia would be doing, going in, trying to get those grants. Always put people first. It's always about what can you do for them. And I guarantee you that you'll walk away with what they can do for you. They will want to do for you because with you came in with a servant's heart, and that heart was to serve them. I do like what Glenn just said, and this does allude to what he was just speaking on, the win-win situations. I've always found that when we look at it from a win-win, everyone walks away from the table fully satisfied and fulfilled. And so even though the end goal is to obtain that grant, achieve that, but the first goal should always be, what can we do for you?
Right. And just to give you a little clarification real quick, Sophia is going to be working as our community outreach partner. So she's going to be selling the organization to potential sponsors and building partnerships in the community.
Okay. And so when you say sponsors, so these are not people that are going to support with a grant?
Well,
Whatever.
they more likely will support in some financial way, or like Glenn was saying, through some form of in-kind donation. So say, for example, we're doing our nonprofit coaching and leadership training annual event. What she'll do is reach out to organizations like Delta Airlines, for example, and explain what the event is, the value, how we're bringing in students from 3 California universities, and how we would like Delta to sponsor our event by providing us
I see.
free air travel to and from Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Or it may
Right.
be something like with one of our juvenile programs at the facility where the kids need X amount of copies of books or paper and pencils, and she may contact Walmart for an in-kind donation and request that they provide us, X amount of supplies or something for the year.
Well, with that being said, you still want to bring what can we do for them? And with
Yes.
that regard, if they have a poster or something, where we can give them credit for their for whatever they supported with for their contributions. Sometimes organizations like that because it's a small form of advertisement that you're doing in that acknowledgement, So we're still, even though that they're helping us, we're providing, we're helping them as well.
Right, definitely. It's always they always say, even though when people give money, they give because they want something in return, whether it's recognition, public, public relations, things of that nature. With that said, I got to get up off of here. Is there any questions anyone want to ask before we go? Sophia? Juan,
No.
y'all good? Okay, so I'll see you guys again at 9. D, don't worry about the 9 o'clock meeting so much, but I'll catch up with you later. And Sophia, we'll talk about those 3 organizations later on this evening, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
then. Y'all have a nice day.
Take
All right,
care.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.